Hey guys, it's Morgan with BDSM Relationships and Education. Thank you very much for checking out this video. If you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell, and that way you know when I upload new videos. We're trying to get back to a once a week schedule at the start back slowly because I've been away for a while. So let's see how that goes. Just got Wolfgar making noise in the background. I hope you guys don't mind too much. Giant puppies. It's like, such a hard life. I have 200 pounds of love. Anyways, today we are going to be talking about a book that I read recently. It is called Hell on Wheels. I'm just looking at my notes here. And it is an anthology of different essays written by disabled dominants. And this whole thing was edited by Raven Kaldera. I hope I say their name right. But it really appealed to me, obviously, because I myself am a disabled dominant. For those of you who don't know, and you can kind of look back through my videos to learn a little more about me and my own personal journey that I have been going through right here on this channel. But I have had chronic pain for a very, very long time, longer than I've had this channel. And so that had interfered with my kink life. But then about just a little under 2 years ago, I was hit by a car. I am now a wheelchair user. And so and I have more pain, of course, because why not? And so it's been really interesting for me to learn to adapt both my DS relationship that I have with my partner, so my dominant submissive relationship, and then also learning how to do BDSM play from a new position. Now, thankfully for me, I have one leg that works, so I can stand for short periods of time. I just have to work on my balance a little bit because I'm kind of lopsided. But I can get around in different ways. So I also use some crutches to get around, and in addition to my wheelchair, so I have options. And so yeah, I'm just kind of babbling here, but the reason that I wanted to read this book was just to connect with other people that were in a similar situation. And now I will give you, the heads up on this one. A lot of it hit really close to home for me. Most of the essays are by disabled dominants, and then there's a few essays at the end that are by submissives who serve disabled dominants. And yeah, I could see a lot of my own relationship reflected back within these stories. Now, I will also, if you guys are interested, I'm going to read it anyways, but if you guys are interested, I can also give you a review of another book that Raven has put together and edited. And I don't remember off the top of my head what it's called, but it's the other side of things. So it's disabled submissives, and talking about the challenges that they've faced and how they've overcome those challenges serving dominance while they are disabled. And so I like that there's, both sides of things. And I think that that's really, really interesting. And I can't wait to get, this was really useful to get the perspective of some submissives who serve disabled dominants. But I also am curious to get that perspective of submissives who are disabled and how they serve. Because I think that it's really interesting to see what people on the other side of the slash do. So, So let me just give you a little bit of information about the book. Again, it is called Hell on Wheels, Disabled Dominance. It is written by various authors, edited by Raven Kaldera. It's through Alfred Press, and it was released in 2012. I bought I'm trying not to hit the table and shake the camera. I bought an ebook version of this. And I did that just on Amazon. So if you are looking for it, I'll make sure I include a link down below. No, I actually bought it right through Raven's website. Sorry. I buy a lot of books on Amazon. It's hard to remember which one goes. But I will make sure to leave a link in the description box for you. It was not very expensive. I don't remember what I paid for it, but it was only a few dollars. And so that is a really, really good deal to get these kind of books for very little money. And yes, that's the other thing. I bought these with my own money. Raven has no idea that I'm going to be doing this review or anything. I don't know Raven. So, there's no connection. I'm not saying that it's good because I'm getting paid or anything like that. So this is genuine from the heart, from, my brain to you guys. So there is 7 essays that are written by dominants, 4 essays written by the submissives of disabled dominants. And they all have physical disabilities. And some may also have other types of disabilities on top of that. But in this book, they said they wanted to focus on physical disabilities. And because other types of disabilities deserve their own book. And physical is the type of disability that Raven himself experiences. He wanted to reach out to others because it is hard to be a disabled dominant because disability is often seen as weakness. I know that has been something when I've gone out to events and people that don't know me start talking to me. A lot of them have assumed that I was submissive. I'm sure partially because I'm a woman, because I used to get that a lot when I was less, like when I appeared to be able-bodied, but also because I'm disabled. So that is kind of interesting to think about as well. And so Raven writes an introduction to the book and tells his own story there. And he talks about his struggles coming to terms with his disability and the issues that he faced. So he stresses throughout this that the sub cannot become that nurse or caregiver, because that is a different role, that it should always be framed as service to the dominant and not caregiver, because a caregiver has more power in Raven's mind over the person than somebody performing a service. Now, I'm sure people will not necessarily agree with that. I think there's a lot of different ways to look at that, but that's his approach. And I kind of liked one of the jobs that he gave his submissives, because he does not like to be coddled. He doesn't want people making decisions for him, and I get that. I am fiercely independent, and I want to do things on my own, even if I struggle, even if it's hard. I want to do it. And so his submissive ended up with a job that neither of them expected the submissive to have, and that was to look for people that were coddling Raven, and the sub can then pull them aside and say, no, don't do that. So I like that. I think that's a great job for a submissive to have, and a great service to perform. So I really like that. And again, a lot of these things I really connected with. And he said that I think a lot of dominants approach having a submissive and say, well, it's your job to make my life easier. Instead, Raven said, it's not necessarily your job to make my life easier. It's your job to make me feel more human and to help me do that. Because I think that a lot of times when we experience disability, we lose a part of ourselves. And so getting that back is really important. Now, the next little point here that I really liked is something that I recognize from my own life. The sub's job for him is to go and check places for accessibility. And my submissive, you guys have met Sage, he does the same thing for me. I send him ahead, he goes and scouts things out, and, lets me know, okay, it's accessible, no, it's not, there's a couple of stairs. Are we going to, is it worth going and tackling this, or are we just going to skip it? So I like that, because like I said, it was straight from my own life. He talks about his own grieving process and how that left his slave or his sub feeling uncertain and afraid. And so they then set up a series of protocols, and he goes into detail about that, about what his slave or his sub is supposed to do when he's not well enough to give orders, when, he's just a big ball of pain and needs to, like, just stay away from the world. So the sub knows what he's supposed to be doing. And he went so far as to send his sub slave to school to learn massage therapy and various other complementary therapies, so that his submissive could perform those kind of services for him. And I think that's just brilliant if you are able to do that. So, it's an interesting approach. It certainly, I don't think, would be for everyone, but I do like sort of the ingenuity there and the creativity in being like, okay, I know that I need these certain complementary therapies, so I'm going to make you learn how to do it, and that's how you're going to serve me. I think that's really cool. He also talks about thinking of his slave or his submissive as a body servant, and that would have been very common in the past. People had, or very, very wealthy people had, body servants that would serve the needs of the rich person's body. So they would assist with, bathing or toileting and all kinds of different things. And so we don't have these people now in modern times, but it's sort of a revamp of that. And I've talked before about different archetypes and ideas around dominance and submission, and I'll throw a link up here somewhere for you guys. And about how I like, the lady and her knight as sort of an archetype of my types of relationships that I enjoy getting into. So, but we've also talked about, like, the butler sub and things like that. So I like this sort of take on it. Again, it's not going to be for everyone. It wouldn't be for me, but I do think that it's an absolutely brilliant way to approach a difficult situation and frame it so that everybody it still feels good about their role. So that's really, really cool. Oh, I wanted to read a quick quote here from Raven. Because I really liked it, because again, it really, like, just touched me, and it spoke to the sadistic side of me, because it is regarding play. A lot of what he wrote about was regarding relationships. This one is regarding play, and he says, topping from a wheelchair, it means that the bottom knows you're not going to have any sympathy for whiny shit, and I like that. So basically he was talking about saying, like, if you are bottoming to a top who's topping you from a wheelchair, I don't care how much you're going to complain that it hurts or whatever, you're not getting any sympathy from me. Obviously we play within people's boundaries and we respect safe words and all that, but man, no, you're not getting any sympathy if you're whiny or wiggly or any of that. Forget it. So I kind of liked that. So now I'm going to move on to talking about a few of the essays that really kind of stood out for me. Master Kink is the first one that you read. So he talked about things like, he talked mostly about the play side of things. So just kind of getting creative, using toys that give more bang for the buck, and I've talked about that before, my love of canes and other toys that are similar, using things like humiliation instead of physical, stuff, which I think is a brilliant idea if that is something that you're into and your partner is into. But he also talked about there got to be a point where it just wasn't working, where he had substituted too much stuff and having to work through that with his partner. He says that he was a strong person, but inside a weak body. And I think that a lot of people can certainly relate to that. And he gives a list of tips that he has for, being able to do play without, this sort of disappointment and, dealing within your limitations and doing what your body will allow. So that was really cool and very helpful as well. Chas is next, and talked about modifying toys and equipment so that they work with your disability, whatever that is. And I know, like, personally, I tend to gravitate to my shorter floggers rather than my longer ones, because my long ones get caught up in my wheels sometimes. So a shorter flogger I can more easily use from a wheelchair. Little things like that. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to do a thing coming up in probably a few weeks, but I'm going to walk through and show you guys some of my personal workarounds and things that I do to make my life a lot easier. Mistress Tiara talked about wondering if it was morally justifiable to keep her slave. She became disabled in the midst of their relationship. And says that he didn't sign up for this, and so she struggled with that. Spoiler alert, they worked it out. But I think that that's a very relatable thing. You know, should I break up with my partner? Would they be better without me? So it's a tough one to think about, but, you know, I think that it's something, again, very, very relatable. Jeff Harrison wrote a essay and talked again about people associating disability with submission. And so that was a bit of a focus. And then he goes on to talk about some play stuff and talks about, now Jeff is blind, and so talked about turning off all the lights and having this room, the playroom, that is absolutely pitch dark, because once he puts his submissive in this pitch black environment, he's definitely in control, because they're stumbling all over the place and they're trying to grab onto stuff and figure out what the hell's going on and where they are and how to move around. And he's like, I do this every day. I'm used to it. So it's like bringing them into his world. And I really liked that. I thought it was a really cool way to go about things. And just talking generally about the use of sensory DAP. And it was a really cool story to read. It was really, really neat. Rave wrote, I believe Rave is one of the first submissives that wrote a story and had tips for serving a disabled dominant, which were excellent tips. And I don't want to give it away. I want you guys to read the book. So you're going to have to read to get all of those really cool tips. And maybe, you know, if you guys have your own tips about being a disabled dominant or a top, or serving a disabled dominant, or, you know, playing with a disabled top, or whatever it is, like, please leave those in the comments. And because I think that the more we can work together and we can share with each other, the better, for sure. Piora, and I hope I'm saying that right, talked about the balance between service and taking charge, and having to find that sort of place where they can still remain submissive, but sometimes they do need to have a bit of control. So that was really a neat thing to sort of hear that particular struggle. And they also talked about the lack of access to the BDSM community. And this was mentioned by a couple of people, just because a lot of the play spaces are not, they're just not accessible, especially if you have various mobility issues. And then Joshua Tenpenny is Raven's partner, and at least I hope I got the right one here, but I'm pretty sure, but talked about becoming his master's tool, which I really liked. And talked again about the caregiving versus caretaking, and just that sort of dichotomy. I mean, it's, you know, maybe nitpicky for some people, but there's a difference between those two concepts. One is a service you perform, the other is taking control. So and walking that fine line. And the last one that I have notes on here was Kaney, who talked about incorporating mobility devices into play. So being a pony girl and pulling the chariot of her mistress. And I've joked about it before, hooking up both, well, my dog and my boyfriend to my wheelchair to pull me around. And so I like the idea of, you know, having a pony person to pull your chariot. So that's really cool, and emphasized again the importance of being a slave and not a mother, not somebody who is going to take charge and look after the person. So I cannot highly recommend this book enough. It's so good, so good. It's a hard read. It was tough to get through. It took me a little while, just because, you know, it brought up stuff within my own life. But if you are disabled or you are the partner of a disabled person, I would highly recommend this book, and I'm sure I will say the same thing about the other book about disabled submissives. But I will leave the link to Raven's website down below, and that way you guys can go and check them out. And he's got all kinds of other really cool books as well. I know that he writes a lot about the sort of intersection of paganism and BDSM and ordeals and stuff like that. I haven't read any of the other books. I certainly will after this. But yeah, so I'm going to leave it there. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review of Hell on Wheels, Disabled Dominance. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the book reviews in general. So I'm going to leave it there. I will see you guys in the next video.